You can also subscribe. I'm having trouble with that word. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free, by the way. We're not charging for a subscription. You can also find us now on Instagram and even TikTok at DP and McGhee or DP _McGhee. You know, sometimes the ones we want aren't always available, but you can find us. You can find us on those platforms now.
Wait, what? There's somebody else who's cyber squatting our handle?
But there freaking needs to be universality in these social platforms with what they allow. I don't know. DP and McGhee. I guess it was just too good not to have been discovered before.
Maybe we should add to our handles DP and McGhee, the OGs.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
To differentiate us from the other TP and McGee's out there.
And with that,
welcome to Wait What? Sports Biz Chat with DP and McGhee, the podcast where we take a sometimes irreverent, sometimes cynical, and yes, even a sometimes serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, Tim McGhee.
And I'm David Parro.
David, we took last week off, and a lot happens when you don't record every week. So I know we have a lot to talk about. So what's on your mind?
So much going on, exciting storylines going on in the world of sports. I want to start real quickly, though, and give you a hearty congratulations for being named to the Columbia University Lacrosse Hall of Fame for your coaching effort during the 1994 undefeated season of the men's lacrosse program. Just a very, very cool honor. I know that was something that was important to you in leading that team, and I wanted to make sure that we highlighted it on the show.
Well, thank you. That is very kind of you. It was a great honor to be recognized with an incredible group of young men, some of whom were able to make it back for the ceremony last week, and some of whom I hadn't seen since they played for me. And we had fun reminiscing. I will tell you, I learned more about leadership from coaching in that program than I did in business school and even in my business career. But I will tell you that some of the guys who showed up, the three captains on that team, two of whom are now doctors, and the third was the CEO of 𝘍𝘕. Another key player on that team is an Emmy-winning producer of sports documentaries. I mean, they just went on to do such tremendous things. And so it's really been an honor to be associated with them then and now.
Yeah, really amazing. That's incredible. So congrats. There are a ton of things that we could obviously be talking about and starting this week's episode with. I'm going to start with the, tale of two stories with the NHL this season. We've talked quite a bit about the NHL on this podcast this season for a lot of really good things, not the least of which the Four Nations face-off. And they did have a great year from an attendance standpoint, record 23 million fans to the games during the season, which was up slightly. They filled almost 97% of the seats, again, a big positive for the league. But they head into the playoffs, and whether it's because of an added Canadian team, a lack of some of the top market teams such as New York, Chicago, Boston, Detroit in the playoffs, their Stanley Cup playoff viewership numbers are slightly down. And they also had some serious problems on the RSN side locally, some of the bigger markets, New York being one of them, Chicago being one of them, significantly down this year. I would say to you, though, that despite that, if you look at the net of this, it would have to be considered a tremendous season for the National Hockey League.
I would agree with you. I think it continues the momentum they've had over the last couple of years, whether it's growth in sponsorship revenue, the success of things like Four Nation. Yes. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's a combination of the 4 U.S.-based original 6 teams not making the playoffs, which are all very big hockey markets: Detroit, Detroit, Chicago, New York, and Boston, none of whom are in the playoffs. And then I don't mean this in the Canadian sense of the word, but hockey is very provincial in terms of viewership. You watch your team, and if your team is not in, you don't necessarily watch. And I think the first round of the playoffs in particular is sort of a good transition from the regular season to the Stanley Cup Finals, because the league hasn't totally taken over the inventory in the building, and the games can still be seen on local broadcasters until you get to the second round. So I think that all works to bring down the viewership. You look in the Eastern Conference, none of the series are particularly close. Different story on the Western Conference. Some really close matchups. But when you look at the top teams in the East, Carolina's looking to close out tonight against the Devils, and I think most of the series are 3-1 in the Eastern Conference, and then most of the series in the Western Conference are 3-2 or 2-2 at this point.
Yeah, and one of the other stories, and I didn't mention one of the other big storylines of the season, why I think Washington had a particularly good year from an RSN standpoint, was the people following Ovi's trying to break Gretzky's record, and if the Caps continue to advance, that'll be a way to kind of put a big star's face on it. And this is interesting, and this is an interesting contrast to what's going on with the NBA. As much criticism I think that the NBA gets for the quality of play, and it seems from people that I know, I hear more I can't watch the NBA, it's unwatchable. That seems to be one of the things I get more, but they are experiencing a very excellent television viewership increase in this playoffs. And I think it somewhat goes to your point about it's a little less about the provincialism of the market and more focused on the stars. And we have one heck of a lot of the big name stars still playing basketball at this point of the season.
Yeah, you've got some great matchups, especially out in the Western Conference. You've got Golden State and Houston. Golden State wins last night. Jimmy Butler goes off. Great star. You've got the Lakers down, but not out. Oklahoma City continues to look really good. And then in the Eastern Conference, with the exception of the Knicks-Pistons series, which is, pretty tight despite the Knicks being up 3-1, very tight. You've got Cleveland, which just, oh my goodness, they looked amazing last night. Boston looks like they're gonna win their series easily. But as you get deep, and this is not a knock on some of the top players in the NHL, the Connor McDavids, the Alexander Ovechkins and so forth, but the NBA has done a tremendous job of making it a star-driven league since Bird and Magic came into the league, quite frankly.
Yeah, just to go over these points, first weekend, and that's what I'm looking at, right? First weekend of the playoffs, 17% increase, 4.4 million average for games. Top game, the Orlando-Boston game 1, 6.7 million viewers on ABC. ESPN looks like they're averaging 4.5 across its platform. So, yeah, big number, exciting news. I think that if it ends up, I'm not trying to jinx it for any of you Knicks fans, but if Boston ends up facing off against the Knicks, I think that series is going to do tremendously. Two huge fan bases. And two exciting teams, to tell you the truth. I mean, you're right about these Knicks Pistons games. It's 3-1, but those games are strong, and the Knicks got a pretty serious benefit of a call, or a no call, I should say, at the end of game 4 there.
Yeah, I mean, the refs had been calling that game very loosely the entire time, but apparently they did come out and say they missed the call at the end of the game on a 3-point shot where the Pistons had a chance to at least tie, if not win the game in regulation. But that's basketball, right? They were out of challenges. They didn't manage their challenges to the point where they could use one at the end of the game, and it cost them big time. I just want to, we mentioned Jimmy Butler. I thought it was great. Jimmy Butler was interviewed after the game last night, and one of the reporters said, "Looks like you and Dylan Brooks were having fun out there, almost like you were playing as kids again." He said, Let's set this straight. I do not like Dylan Brooks. That was not fun. I don't like that guy." He then went on to say, you know, "I compete my hardest out there. He competes his hardest out there." So while he may not like Dylan Brooks, he certainly showed him respect by putting him in the same category uh, with Dylan Brooks in terms of the level of competition. But I just thought that was great. I mean, that was unvarnished. That was honest Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, and I think one thing you'll get with Jimmy Butler, and you may not agree with the way he goes about things, particularly the way he exited Miami, say, but you're going to get an honest view from him. I don't think there's anything not genuine about that guy, and you can never criticize how hard he goes out and play. I mean, he suffered what could have been a pretty serious injury. It looked bad, right? It looked like it was painful, if nothing else. So I'm guessing he's coming back and not necessarily feeling his best. And he comes out and has a huge game and seals the rebound at the end of the game to put Golden State in this position. So the fans out there have to love this guy and what he's brought to that team, which I think we've talked about this before, both on and off air. Maybe they're well past their prime, and they may be, but man, Butler lays it all out there. That's how he got hurt in the first place.
Yeah, very good point. So we've talked NHL and NBA playoffs. You want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the NFL draft?
Yeah. What is it? Was there a big event or something recently with the NFL?
I remember being in a meeting 20 years ago with past guest Keith Wachtel, who was then at the NFL, now with the NHL, and Keith telling us in a meeting that one of the goals the NFL had was to turn it into a 365-day-a-year sport. And I remember thinking to myself, how are you going to do that? And by goodness, they've done it to the point where, because of what happened with Shadeur Sanders, we were talking about the 5th round of the draft. And you've got to be in most cases, you've got to be an incredibly dedicated fan to even have an interest in what's going on in the 5th round of the draft. I mean, I'm reminded Allen Iverson, we're not talking about 1st round. We're talking 5th round.
Yeah.
Right. And because Shadeur Sanders slipped from what was thought to be a pick in the 1st round.
Well, he certainly thought it was a pick in the 1st round.
Yeah. I think the tide started to turn within the last month before the draft, but he went from a potential 1st round or high 1st round draft pick to a 5th round pick of the Cleveland Browns. And this is something the Jets would have done. He's now the 5th quarterback in their locker room. So they've got Deshaun Watson, who's not going to be playing, but is still under contract on the roster. You've got Joe Flacco, who, calls Aaron Rodgers a kid, I think. You've got Kenny Pickett, who was supposed to, when he was drafted, was supposed to be the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you got the kid out of Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, was chosen in the 3rd round.
3rd round. Yeah.
And so now you've got five quarterbacks in the locker room. And I don't think we'll ever know why Shadeur Sanders slipped as far as he did. And what I mean by that is, we know that his father was actively involved. We know that we have heard reports that he did not interview well, that he came across as arrogant. But we don't know how much of the decision by the 31 other clubs to pass on him through 4+ rounds is related to his talent as a quarterback, and how much is related to the baggage that he brings with him.
For teams that had a need at quarterback in the 1st round, you take the quarterback that you think is going to help you win, right? You have to. It's too risky. But we know this position is hard to analyze. It's hard to predict. And there's been so, I can just go through my Bears history of the last, 15 years and show you that. So it's an absolutely tough pick, but a quarterback did go number one, Cam Ward out of Miami. So I think at a certain point, unless there was an absolute need, it's easy to pass on the guy for all the reasons that you may have mentioned. Again, we're speculating. We don't know. We're hearing the reports like everybody else. But to be on the Browns, I mean, it's kind of funny that it's the Browns, to your point. And he comes after someone picked in the third round, not the first round. And Pickett and Flacco and Deshaun not playing, were all first-round picks. So it's pretty remarkable. In a comment, and I can't remember if it was the GM or the coach that talked about Shadeur having the opportunity to perform well above his draft level. And I'm like, well, I would perform against better than that if I went out and played. I mean, it was fifth round pick, and that's not a knock. I'm not trying to be snarky. It's just that that's almost too obvious. The one thing I'll say is it does set up to be a great story if he comes and proves all of the critics wrong. If he backs up everything he said and he does perform and he does show that he's that level, great. I kind of like the fact that he's saying he's using Tom Brady as motivation. That's good on him. He should, because Brady was a low draft pick and became the GOAT. So there is something interesting there, but he's got a lot of people to climb over, right? And the thing that also is, of course, funny about this is because the legendary Mel Kiper, who honestly never shows up as an analyst at all on ESPN. I mean, they have a gazillion analysts on contract, it seems, and on various platforms. He shows up at the draft because his knowledge is so deep to, all the way through the draft. That's his thing. I mean, he wrote the book, right? Basically, that's his thing. And he has the haircut, so he has the whole brand thing. But he is nearly apoplectic over Shadeur Sanders, or he was going. And it was entertainment, man.
And I wonder how much of that is shtick and how much is his really being, upset and perplexed that Shadeur Sanders slipped that far in the draft. I don't know. But Mel Kiper is the guy who had Patrick Mahomes as number 5 in the quarterback in terms of rankings of the quarterbacks who were drafted in that particular draft.
Can you do that? Can you say what you just said, but do it in Chris Collinsworth voice? I think here's a guy that had Patrick Mahomes.
The one thing I will say about Shadeur Sanders is the fact that he was the butt of a prank phone call that was actually done by the son of the Falcons coordinator, 𝘎𝘰𝘥𝘪𝘯𝘨, who was the interim head coach of the Jets last year. And I don't think anybody deserves that. These punks who think that they're funny, and because apparently a number of draft picks will receive prank phone calls. This was the one to Shadeur Sanders was the only one apparently done by 𝘎𝘰𝘥𝘪𝘯𝘨. And he did speak to Shadeur Sanders and he apologized to him. But these punks that do that, they're taking away from what should be a tremendous, notwithstanding the fact that he went to the 5th round. Ultimately, he achieved his goal of being drafted by an NFL team. And we should not lose sight of what an accomplishment that is. Shadeur Sanders nor anybody should be subject to that. Now, you can make the argument the reason we all know about it is because Shadeur Sanders was live streaming his entire draft experience. And if he hadn't been, we wouldn't know about it. But I don't want that to be viewed as victim blaming. It's not. He should not have been subjected to that. But that's one thing I think we can all agree on. It was a shitty thing that he had to endure.
Absolutely. I mean, the family has put itself out there and they are brash. There's no doubt about it. So I'm sure they expect a few additional darts. They should if they don't. But that's just crossing the line. I mean, that's like the old school Howard Stern stuff, but that was that whole shtick. It's Yes, I think someone thinking they're funny, but he certainly didn't deserve that. And that tends to be cruel. So,
you can make fun of a lot of things, but please don't go after Captain Jenks, the famous prank phone caller on Howard Stern. He was
it was the best. I cannot believe how successful that guy's hit rate was. Unbelievable.
He got on the air with ABC News during the low speed car chase and famously said, "I've seen OJ and he's looking mighty scared." Now, I won't repeat what is now would be considered very much in a racist sort of accent. But he got Al Michaels to famously say, "Lest anybody think that call was real." So Captain Jenks was awesome. Anyway, we digress.
So,
what else do you have on your mind?
Well, while we're on football, I guess just kind of quick. I don't think we have to spend too much time on it, but I want to give it's not really a shout out, but Lee Corso retiring after 38 seasons from College Game Day. What a service he's provided. I mean, he's been such an important part of that show, which became one of the models for pregame shows, awards after awards after awards. Great sponsorship opportunity for the companies that have been involved, a great way to build the college football brand. I mean, ESPN can take so much credit, and Lee Corso was a critical part of that. He joins that after a very long coaching career as well. So I just wanted to say job well done, Lee Corso, and ESPN for holding on to him as long. I know they changed the face a little bit by putting McAfee in that center spot. But they kept Corso's bit, in terms of that final pick of the big game. And so I'm happy they did, because it was a big part of that show.
I just want to go back to something you said about ESPN award after award after award, some of which they actually earned. But yes, Lee Corso was the quintessential don't take yourself too seriously, but take what you do seriously. So whether it was jumping out into the student section or putting on the mascot's head as part of his prediction, he really set the standard for somebody in that role, because his picks were so well informed, but so entertaining in their delivery that there'll never be another one. And one thing that we should point out is that I think it was about 10 years ago, he suffered a fairly major stroke. And I remember speaking to his son, Dan, who runs the sports commission in Atlanta, about that. And Dan was saying how hard his dad was working to get back into shape, physically, to be able to continue his work, which he did up until this past season. So I think he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that dedication to his craft as well.
Simple line, not so fast. Work wonders.
Yeah. Before we take a break, I want to give a quick shout out, like sort of a humorous shout out. I was watching the news the other day, and they had a piece on Cam Jurgens, who, if you recall, stepped into some pretty big shoes to fill as the center of the Philadelphia Eagles, replacing Jason Kelce when he retired. And he just recently signed a $68 million deal with the Eagles. And a reporter asked him what he was planning on doing with the money. And he said, "Well, I've been flying a lot." And I remember thinking to myself as I'm watching it, "Oh, geez, here's another rich athlete who's going to buy a jet or learn how to, become a pilot or something." And Cam said, "So I've been flying a lot. So I was going to look into maybe that TSA pre-check, because I think that might save me some time on the lines."
You should just reach out to him and let him know that with the Amex Platinum card, he'll get that paid for. I think he can.
Yeah, or if you're going to go, you're going to go that far, go get clear. But
right, spend a few extra bucks, get clear.
TSA pre-check is $77.95.
You may not
for 5 years. It's the best deal in travel.
Best deal in travel.
And he thought he might look into getting that. I just thought that was good. There was a guy who has not lost his his footing, so to speak, and where he came from.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Hey, one more thing before we do take a break, because I've been meaning to mention this for a couple weeks and I haven't gotten around to it, because I do think it's important. And Premier League just ended this past weekend. The MLS Board of Governors did meet, and the thought was that there was going to be a move to shift the alignment of the MLS season to that of international soccer. And they put that on hold, and it looks like it won't be until the earliest 2027 season that we will be looking at an alignment with the primary U.S. league, Major League Soccer, Men's League, not matching up with the international schedule, which I think eventually would be a good thing for Major League Soccer and how people view it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think part of it is probably stems from the fact that there's next year's not going to be a typical season with the World Cup coming to North America.
Right.
So you probably want to hold off on that and do that. Yeah, it would make things more streamlined in transfer windows, and I don't think it portends a move towards promotion and relegation, but it does align, at least on a calendar basis, with the rest of first division soccer around the world.
All right. We'll be right back.
It's time for our guest.
So we're back and delighted to welcome a real sports marketing veteran to the Sports Biz Chat. Jeff Gooding is a vice president of marketing at Ace Hardware, a truly iconic American retail brand. Prior to beginning his 14-plus years at the hardware giant, Jeff served as an SVP at Revolution, a really great independent Chicago-based sports marketing agency. He also has held leadership positions at Bally Total Fitness, General Motors, and CART, the predecessor to IndyCar. So, Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Listen, we talked about this on the show recently. Ace announced a major multi-year deal with Major League Baseball, and we do want to spend a little time, talking about that because we feel this is a pretty significant sponsorship deal. It made Ace the official home improvement partner of Major League Baseball. Just give us an overview of the strategy behind the deal and what you see, what you think fans can expect to see from it.
Yeah, no, look, we don't take sponsorship lightly at Ace. We hardly ever do them, maybe we'll get a little bit into the structure of Ace and why that's important and why it's hard to do. And we're very judicious about how we invest our retailers' dollars. But on the Major League Baseball side of things, it was opportunistic for us, of course, and having relationships, from my past in the home office there at MLB and having some friends there, we got into the conversation. And so, look, really the strategy behind it is it's perfect timing, right? In fact, I don't know why they haven't had a sponsor in a while. I mean, I can guess, but for us, it's the perfect time of year. From April to October, everything that's important to us is flying off the shelves, or we want to fly off the shelves. And so to reach this targeted audience from a 100-year-old iconic hardware brand, Ace Hardware, in America's pastime, and from April to October with grills and lawn and paint and outdoor power and power tools being important during that time of the year, it's the perfect marriage for us to come together and have us market that way through baseball, America's best pastime, to fans all over the country.
I just want to dig in a little bit more deeply. You said it was opportunistic, but does this sponsorship signify a major shift in your overall marketing strategy or sponsorship strategy, or do you think this might be it for now? It's a big, it's a big thing for you to have to digest and leverage.
Yeah, good question. This will be the only sponsorship we'll do for a period of time. Again, we don't take these lightly. We get approached by everybody every week about all kinds of different things, as you can imagine. And since the announcement, even more so, as you can imagine. But this will be the only one that we will do. And look, we were already spending in media, sports media. And long ago, we didn't really invest in sports media. The cost of it, the premium of it versus just regular TRPs in the past. Well, the media landscape has shifted, as you guys know. So TRPs aren't all equal anymore, whereas they were at least reported to be that way in the past. So quality over quantity. And so as we've gotten into sports and we are leaning into it more, reason being is we know that sports media works for us. We know, and by tracking, that is driving traffic and sales to our stores. And as a retailer, obviously that is the most important thing. Yes, brand awareness and consideration and all the way down through the funnel. But at the end of the day, as a retailer, we better drive traffic and we better sell something. And we know sports media and then baseball as a major part of that, we know track very well to doing just that, driving traffic and sales to the stores.
Yeah, the clarity of purpose here is just so great to hear. Very tight, and everything you're saying just makes so much sense as to why you move forward with something like that. And oftentimes, I think the strategy, while the execution can always get convoluted, when the strategy is convoluted, then it's tough. And clearly, you guys have kind of thought that through.
Well, I'll give you one. I'll give you one more if you don't mind. One more that makes it even, I'll call it tighter. We carry some of the best brands in every one of these destination driving categories: paint, power, barbecue, and lawn and garden. So from grills to power to paint, we've got the best in the business. And without legal on the call, we're the only ones who carry them across under one roof across that collection of brands. However, we don't have a high enough awareness. If you go back up the funnel, we don't have a high enough awareness for folks to even consider to drive to our stores, why to Ace, to get those destination driving best brands in those categories. So one of the reasons we're doing this also is to highlight those brands at Ace through this baseball partnership, be it behind the plate signage, through certainly our TV advertising, and any activations we might do. We'll highlight those specific brands at Ace to drive that consideration and ultimately that traffic to stores for that. Because when we do that, we know that we lift the entire store from a sales perspective.
By the way, we have a weird thing on this show. We have a number of weird things we do on this show. One of them is when the guest says, that was a great question, we generally acknowledge who the question, because I think this one was mine. Is that right, Tim?
I couldn't remember, which is why I didn't bring it up first.
You added one in between where those were, if I'm not mistaken, but I think this one, maybe we just give a half point to each. Maybe we just roll this one over. We have a friendly, weird competition that we don't know how it works, but
that's awesome.
David wrote almost all of the questions. I added one. I thought it might be this one, but it might have been another one. But thank you for acknowledging it, Jeff.
I want you to take a step back here. I'm not sure everyone knows that Ace hardware stores are owned locally, even though it's the helpful place. And that brand has that idea of that has been in place for a long time. Can you give an overview of what the business model is and how that factors into how you market?
Yeah, it's super important. We've got a very unique structure. We're a hardware cooperative. So, David, as you mentioned, we've got over 5,000 stores domestically here in the U.S. We're in 60 countries, but 5,000 stores here in the U.S. And when you become a store owner, you own part of the corporation. We're not publicly traded. We're not a franchise organization, as most people would probably think we are. We are a locally owned cooperative. And so up and down main streets all around the country, we've got individual owners, oftentimes handed down through the family, multi-generational family ownership in hardware stores that own the company. So as the marketing guy, I like to say I have 5,000 bosses that are all experts in advertising, and I hear about it all the time. But what makes it very unique is every dollar we spend, excuse me, is their dollars. And so we take that extremely seriously, because as you get to know the retailers you work for, this is their life. This is what their lives have been through the generations. And so it's personal. It's not, you're not working for some big bad corporate, Wall Street type organization. This is individuals and their families and everything they got invested, and they've entrusted us to build this brand and build their businesses and have them grow and thrive for the next 100 years. And so we take it incredibly seriously how our ownership structure is, and therefore how we invest on their behalf. It takes a lot of serious thought and decision making in what we choose to invest with, and baseball is no different than what we've done in the past and what we'll do going forward.
So just to follow up on that, from what you're saying, it sounds like these deals this Major League Baseball deal is going to be activated hyper locally to a certain extent, or at least at least the hope is that it will drive retail traffic on a hyper-local basis. How will you be supporting it from a corporate level, and what are the expectations of these individual store owners in terms of becoming involved in the sponsorship?
Yeah, we're not quite sure what the activation plan is going to be yet as we go through this. What I can tell you is what we'll concentrate on doing is building it corporately, and what we like to say is the easy button. So when we hit the easy button, we want the stores to feel it. They have a lot to do. As we just went through, individuals, husbands and wives, small families own these stores, and there's an awful lot for them to do to operate their stores and have it grow from inventory to sales to what have you. Marketing, and oftentimes is sort of lower on the list. And so what can we do corporately to build out things that they feel not only nationally, but then down to the local store level? And how can we push that button and have them feel it? So that's what we'll do from how to leverage this or this program both corporately and down to the local level.
So they're kind enough to share their advertising expertise with you, but don't necessarily have the time or bandwidth to execute it.
Don't put Jeff in a bad spot here.
Yeah.
We can say that. He's
the one who said he has 5,000 bosses who are all experts.
But I want to kind of follow up on that. So this whole idea of hyper local. Ace Hardware stores in communities. When I was living in Chicago, I was out in Clarendon Hills, very close, obviously, to where you work in Oak Brook, Jeff. We had a great Ace Hardware store right there. I think it was an Ace Hardware store. I don't want to, it could have been.
It was back then, yes.
Okay. And their involvement in the local community was massive. Now, they're obviously not striking a Cubs deal on their own or a White Sox deal on their own, but they're involved in the community. Can you talk about how, even with this big national deal, which, is an investment, how critical are those local owners, their involvement and their spends in local community? How important is that to their business and their livelihoods, basically?
It's important, right? So our store owners live in the communities their stores are in. Their kids go to schools in the communities they're in. They go to church in the communities in which they live and their stores are in. So they're a fabric of the community. Their stores are. And again, many of them have been there longer than we've been around. So 100+ years in those cases. And obviously, it's a great story. So some are over 100 years old, and then we're opening over 100 new stores a year, and have for the last 5-6 years every year. So almost 1,000 stores over the last 6 years, and continue to. And so then you're imparting new fabric and new communities all over the country as well as we go across it, again, up to the 5,000 stores or more that we have across the country. So their involvement in their local community is incredibly important, and really it's up to them. So we give them some resources to do that. So I'll take it up a level. Just like we do, they get approached all the time for getting involved in different causes and community efforts and so on and so forth. So at the corporate level, it was decided long ago that we will, as a company, get involved in 2 causes: Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and then Red Cross for disasters. And so every day, all day, we think about Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And why? Obviously, it's helping sick kids and families, but every dollar raised, and we've raised, and I'll get the number wrong, over $150 million for Children's Miracle Network over the last 20 years. All those dollars stay in those local communities. And so since we're local community based in all the stores that we have around the country, it was really important that not only helping kids, but that we're helping kids in the communities where our stores are. And like, as you mentioned, I worked at General Motors, and that is an organization that bleeds GM blue, and they're great for the communities. And I thought and they're awesome at it. I put Ace Hardware right up there with them, and right down to these individual store owners and how they think about Children's Miracle Networks, what they do to fundraise, both from in the communities, store roundup, so you can round up your change at stores and have those, and all those dollars go back to those hospitals. So that's at sort of the corporate level. And then stores get involved in everything that they want to get involved in, their choice in their local communities, from supporting the little leagues around the towns, and great park down there in Clarendon Hills that they used to get involved in, through to Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, in and around the stores, and selling cookies and what have you out in front of the stores, and popcorn on heavy weekends throughout the year. So they support lots of different things, and it's just whatever their heart desires.
It's like everything you're saying on this local involvement is just, to me, even strengthening the reason why MLB was a logical property, because it all just feels so connected.
100%. That's why it's such a great property to us, from the big boys in the big leagues all the way down to the little leagues and everything in between. Makes a ton of sense for sort of the fabric of America. America pastime, and again, 100-year-old iconic hardware brand.
Jeff, before we let you go, we have two more questions, but want to thank you again. David and I were saying in the last episode when we were talking about this deal, it's hard to think of a more sort of authentic connection between two brands than Ace Hardware and Major League Baseball. So kudos to you and your team, and congratulations on this deal. So as I said, before we let you go, two quick questions that we ask all our guests. The first one is,
Where'd your career get started? Where'd you start it?
Well, it seems like 1,000 years ago now. And it's as hard then as it is now. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. I worked for free coming out of college. And so I went to Miami University in Ohio. I wanted to get in the sports business. There was no internet then, so you're writing letters. You don't even know if jobs are available, and you'd hang them on the wall in wherever you lived in school. There were rejection letters, and I led the league at Miami University in rejection letters. So I was sending them to teams and leagues and what have you. And to cut it short, in Oak Brook, actually, and so actually, we're in my old office. I looked right at the building where I started my career some 30 years ago. I was calling a sports marketing agency. They were working with the NFL. And they happened to answer the phone 2 days before Thanksgiving. And I was coming to I grew up in California, but I was coming to Chicago for Thanksgiving with my grandparents. And the guy made the mistake by answering the phone. And you could tell he didn't want to talk to me. And he said, so I just kept persistence on the phone. And he said, well, look, if you can get here tomorrow, day before Thanksgiving, we'll talk to you. So I get there the day before Thanksgiving. They give me a 3-hour interview. They're clearly having fun with me because they've got nothing better to do on the day before Thanksgiving. Questions like, we're like sharks. How are you like a shark? I'll never forget. It was one of my interview questions. And at the end of it, I must have done something right. They said, well, we don't actually have a job. But if we did, we'd hire you. And so I said right there on the spot, I'll tell you what, I'll work for free for 3 months. And if at that end of that time, it doesn't work out, then be on my way. And if it does, then we'll work out something. And it did. And so I ended up working with them and the NFL properties and coming up with promotions for some of the licensees and sponsors. And that's where it all started. Now, you don't go from free to $1 million overnight. So it started slow, but I built my career from that. So that's how I broke it.
That has got to be one of the best stories we've heard.
Tremendous.
That's fantastic. And then the last one is, what one piece of advice would you have for a young person in a similar situation looking to break into the industry?
Yeah, look, and we're all the same, right? So we're trying to help young people get into the business and pay it forward. Someone was, like I just explained, someone was dumb enough to take a risk on me. And it's this time of year, right? Graduation's coming up for a lot of folks and they're looking for jobs. And so we should all be looking forward to and paying it forward for folks. And it is hard. You guys know better than I do. It is hard to break into the sports industry as a young person coming out of school. So my advice is, be passionate, be persistent, get a job. I can guarantee you one thing, and you guys would say the same thing. Your first job won't be your last. That's the advice I'm giving to people right now, including my kid who's a junior, who's just starting to think about where he's going to go. Your first job is not going to be your dream job, and it's not going to be your last. You get one, you gain the experience to get your next one. And the other piece of advice is, how are you going to break the tie? When you're up against, you've broken through, you've gotten through any algorithm, or somebody's gotten your resume to the top of the pile at wherever you want to get hired at, how are you going to break the tie? Because there's going to be a tie between you and at least one other person. How do you win? Every day is a competition. How do you win that?
Jeff Gooding, Ace Hardware. This is that was tremendous close. Great start, great middle, awesome close. Some of the best advice I think we've heard in that story truly is great. Listen, thank you so much for sharing your insights and sharing a little of the backstory on this deal. I also want to say, enjoy that amazing new Ace Hardware headquarters that you're in, which is the office I used to go to when I was working at McDonald's, which is awesome. And we can't thank you enough for coming, especially since you're actually on vacation right now. So thank you.
Happy to do it anytime, guys.
Thank you.
All right. A big thanks to Jeff Gooding from Ace Hardware. Really enjoyed that conversation, Tim. So now is the time of the show where we take a little bit of a peek forward instead of looking back. So, Tim, what do you have your eye on?
Well, it's keeping an eye on and giving a shout out in one breath to Wrexham. They made history in English football. The only club in history to be promoted back to back to back in 3 years. They went from the 5th division to the 2nd division, the championship, in large part due to the celebrity ownership of Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds, who invested $2.5 million in that club several years ago, parlayed the investment into a very popular documentary series, Welcome to Wrexham, got tremendous sponsor support, Aviation Gin, which is a Ryan Reynolds company, to Expedia, to TikTok. So now they are on the precipice of being promoted to the Premier League. And I'm not suggesting that they will be promoted again this year, because that last step is incredibly difficult. And if you look at, say, Brentford, which my friend Rich Coccapolo with the Daily Mail is a big supporter of Brentford, I think they went from 3rd division to 2nd division in 2014 and then got promoted to the Premier League in 2023. So 9 seasons, which I think is probably a realistic expectation, because you've got clubs like Leicester City, which won the championship less than 10 years ago. It won the Premier League championship, less than 10 years ago, being relegated again. These are clubs that not only have the financial resources, but also know what it takes to compete at that level. And I think it takes time to learn that. So, but doesn't detract from what Wrexham has done.
No, it's an incredible story. And, I've been thinking on this as to what is the message of this story. And I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that it was going to be a very difficult next step for them, but it truly is remarkable. And what I'm struck by is that because we all know that storytelling continues to be important. Past guest Joe Favorito really walked us through what all that meant. And I think you and I both believe in that concept as it relates to sport. But how storytelling driven by these two celebrities and the documentary can lead to other things, including, in this case, success on the pitch. I think it's been a really remarkable story, and there will be detractors, of course. But yeah, just a really amazing situation there.
They did an incredible job on the commercial side. Nobody can deny that, but you have to look at what they did on the sporting side as well. They put people in place like manager Phil Parkinson, and other guys up the chain of command who understand football and how that works, and they let them do their job.
Agree 1,000%. My point is that the approach that they've taken and the concept of purchasing this team and looking at it as though it is a story to tell, which they have now told, has helped facilitate. I don't say that the absolute cause of the things happening, but facilitating or enabling or influencing all those other things to be able to happen.
Agree 100%. If they made that purchase of the club, they could go out and secure partners because of their celebrity. But if they didn't deliver on the sporting side, those partners probably wouldn't stay with them, and eventually the revenue would get to a point that would be more aligned with a club on the 5th division level as opposed to a celebrity-owned club. So they've done all the right things, to the point where I think there are probably a lot of other people out there who think they can replicate that model. And I don't necessarily think they can. I think Ryan Reynolds is an incredibly bright business person, incredibly bright marketer. But again, without supporting and developing the sporting side, this would be a fun story, but it wouldn't be the success story that it's been. And I just think it's incredible. And yeah, there'll be haters and there'll be detractors, but you can't take away from being promoted 3 years in a row and going from the fifth division to the second division. That's just incredible. And I'll continue to follow the story. And someday, hopefully, they will be promoted to the Premier League, um, and then we can talk about it then.
Do you have anything
What
else?
about you? No, what about you? What do you got
Well,
on your
let's
mind?
stay on the football front, the soccer front here for a second. I have a shout out to Liverpool FC for winning the Premier League, closing out an epic season at
Wow.
one of the most amazing venues in the world of sports, Anfield, there in Liverpool, in front of the faithful. It was just it was an amazing thing to watch at the end of that. And we'll see all kinds of brand stuff. Google is getting a lot of attention right now for the brand activation that they did, particularly with Mo Salah there at the end. But my shout out actually is to two people that I've gotten to know over the last few years. Lindsay Moore, who's the director of global partnership sales there with LFC and another great MSG alum, and Liam Brown, VP of partnership sales at Fenway Sports Group. Just two people really solid who approach the sales effort in a very collaborative way, and I am very excited for them. I'm a fan, obviously, of Liverpool, so I'm excited there. But it's been nice getting to know those two individuals that are very involved in the sales effort there for Liverpool. It's just an amazing organization. Kentucky Derby this weekend, so I guess we'll have an eye on that. Am I right about that? Kentucky Derby?
First weekend in May. Yep.
I'm always excited to see how the brands are going to showcase and what new inventory, what new places, logos will be placed.
Is this their 150th running? I think it may be.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Which is wild that you haven't heard more about it.
Yeah, agree.
Well, it's not. It's the 151st. So
there you go.
Yeah. quick funny story. Do you remember back when Trivial Pursuit was a popular board game? Playing with a dear friend of mine who was a elite gymnast at Cornell in their Hall of Fame, and still a dear friend to this day. But anyway, one of the questions was, what's the most exciting 2 minutes in sports? The answer is supposedly the Kentucky Derby, but her answer was my floor routine, which I just thought was a brilliant.
Perfect.
It's just a brilliant joke.
She should be in the Hall of Fame for that alone. The other thing is, I want to mention that the F1 The Academy, that's the name of the show, F1 The Academy, is launching on Netflix. This is I guess, similar programming to what Drive to Survive was for F1. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because it focuses on the F1 Academy, which is the all-female series. It's produced by Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine Company. I'm excited to see what they were able to get. I had a chance to speak with Susie Wolf, who's the managing director of F1 Academy, about this as it was being filmed. And I said, are you excited about this? Because the cameras were everywhere, just like the Drive to Survive people. And she looked a little nervous. She goes, I just hope there are enough stories. I'm like, if they're anything like the folks that are doing Drive to Survive, they'll make sure they find the stories. And so I'm excited to see what they come up with. And I think it's another nice, statement and advancement for women in sport.
Nice name drop, by the way. Susie Wolf came with a hair's breadth of getting a seat in F1. She was a developmental driver for Mercedes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and she's a very impressive executive, and this is a cool series. And I think we'll have to see where Formula One goes with this and what it all means. But this is a nice step. I'm hoping the program is as intriguing as Drive to Survive has been.
Can I make one of my famous predictions before you close out?
Yes.
We will see a female driver in Formula One before Wrexham is promoted to the Premier League.
I think that's pretty.
I got to win. I got to win.
Yeah, I think that's
one of my predictions.
That's probably pretty safe, but you don't know. I mean, these guys keep knocking it out.
Yeah.
True. And by the way, name drop, and I didn't even bring up until right now that wife of Toto Wolff, who is the head of the Mercedes team. A lot of people will say that first bit, which is not why I think she should be known, because I think she's carving one heck of her own path here.
Yeah, she has unfortunately been subjected to rumors of nepotism because of her marriage to Toto Wolff. But everything I know about her, and I used to look after Willis Insurance, and they had a partnership with Susie Wolff. She's everything you say she is.
I'm just so excited by the fact that you were impressed with that name drop, because I knew when I was put it down in my notes that it was a name drop. Like I was going, I'm going to drop Susie Wolff's name, and appreciate that you felt solid about it being a name drop. All right. So that brings us to the end of another episode. For those that are counting, our 108th. A big thanks again to Jeff Gooding of Ace Hardware for providing some excellent insight into the new deal with Major League Baseball. And of course, thank you to all of you for listening. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You do that because you don't want to miss an episode. You can also subscribe. You can also subscribe. I'm having trouble with that word. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free, by the way. We're not charging for a subscription. You can also find us now on Instagram and even TikTok at DP and McGhee or DP ampersand McGhee. You know, sometimes the ones we want aren't always available, but you can find us. You can find us on those platforms now.
Wait, what? There's somebody else who's cyber squatting our handle?
But there freaking needs to be some universality in these social platforms with what they allow. I don't know. DP and McGhee. I guess it was just too good not to have been discovered before. Anyway,
maybe we should add to our handles DP and McGhee, the OGs.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
To differentiate us from the other DP and McGee's out there.
And with that, I'm DP, he's McGhee, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah.